Hello, today we're going to be talking about forcible entry. My vision for this program is to create strong firefighters who are confident in their skills and able to perform under stress and pressure and knowing when it's appropriate versus not. I originally started coming up with this program because I was on a call. My lieutenant had asked me to go force a basement door beyond a bulkhead. Up to this point in my career, I'd used the same move with the Halligan every time, and it worked for me. On this particular day, the move didn't work, and I didn't have a plan B, C, or D. So I went back to the station, started reading more, taking notes, watching videos, and I got a little carried away, and this is what I came up with. So when we talk about forcible entry, it's really important for us to know when it's appropriate to force versus when it's not. Passive entry would be a non-emergent situation. So recently we did a call where a mother called because her doors were locked, she couldn't get in her house, and her son was sleeping in bed. They could see him on the camera. He was totally safe. We can practice soft entry methods where we don't break anything because there is no emergency. Medium entry, not super emergent, but we still need to get in. An example would be a commercial fire alarm. Alarms are sounding. It doesn't look like anything's going on. There's no smoke or fire. But we do need to get in there at some point. If there's no key holder or anybody coming, we need to make sure that the fire alarm isn't going off because there's a small fire that's contained by the sprinkler system, or the sprinkler system isn't just running inside, causing millions of dollars worth of damage. So in that situation, it's worth maybe using the K tool, breaking out a lock, or something similar to getting into the building, but not causing super extensive damage. And then forcible entry is obviously more emergent. The rules of engagement have been crossed, and we are going to go right to forcing a door. For example, you pull up to a house on fire, you go stretch a line up to the front door, and the door is locked. That would be an obvious situation where you would force the door. So, potential threat to people, property, environment, whether that's a fire or some sort of time-sensitive medical call that you need to get beyond that door. Recently did a stroke where the person was just yelling behind the door and we couldn't get to them, so that would be a situation where we used force. So to be good at forcible entry, you really have to understand the Halligan tool. There are a bunch of different parts to the Halligan. First, right here, that's called the adze. It's a flat side of the tool. It's 2 inches thick and 6 inches long. Then you have the pick or the pike, depending what part of the country. There's different names. It's also 6 inches long. The entire tool is about 30 inches long. You can buy different sizes, but the size that most fire departments buy are about 30 inches long. These are called the shoulders, which will be important later when we talk about actually forcing doors. Right here in between the two forks is called the crotch. So right here, like if this was somebody's legs, that would be the crotch. And then these are called the forks. So we got it all labeled up for you now. The only thing I didn't mention is the triangle, and we'll talk about that. So adze with the gap down, which is this move right here, is our strongest move with the most mechanical advantage you can have. He sticks the tool in, and then he goes down. So that's the first one right here, adze gap down. That's 15 to 1. If you want to know how they get 15 to 1 mechanical advantage, the math's right here. So the tool is 30 inches long. The adze width is 2 inches, so 30 divided by 2 is 15 to 1. That's your most mechanical advantage that you could possibly get. The second is your forks. So if you drove those forks right here into the door and you had it positioned properly, you would get a 12.5 to 1 mechanical advantage. The way you get that is 30 minus 5. You minus 5 off because you're going to send that tool in until it gets to the crotch. And I'll show you that as we go. But you minus that 5 off, that's where the fulcrum is. So that gives you a 25. And then the spread is 2 inches as well. So when you divide it, 25 divided by 2 is 12.5 to 1. So that's your second most mechanical advantage. Next is your adze length. So that would be if you use the length of this adze, stuck it in the door and pulled the tool towards you, and that would be a 5-to-1 advantage. You can see the math there, how you got it. The pick or the pike, same thing, is 5-to-1. 30 divided by 6 is 5-to-1. Something interesting on a move that can really help you out is if there's enough space to stick the pick and the adze into the door, it creates a triangle, and it gives you a little bit more of an advantage, a 6-to-1. So if you're having trouble with that 5-to-1, you can put both in, and it might just give you enough to force the door. The red line is there for a reason, so the top two have really good mechanical advantage, but they don't have a lot of spread. See, the spread is only about 2 inches. So a lot of times that's enough to break through maybe the doorknob section, but if it's deadbolted, it might not be quite enough to get through the deadbolt. The bottom three don't have great advantage. You can see it's only 5-to-1 or 6-to-1, but they have great spread. So when you go to force the door using this, you get 6 inches of spread and 5. The point is, when you have a really strong door, you have to start with the top two. You need the most mechanical advantage that you can get, but that might not finish the door off, but you hurt the door, so now you can use the other three methods to finish it off, and that will give you more spread and enough length to get that rest of the door open, especially if there's some sort of chain lock, any other locks on the other side of the door that you don't know about. So, gap down again, stick the tool in, this is my first move every time, and then you gap the door down. You're going to want to hold capture, and we'll talk about that as we go. So shock the door, gap, set, force. Some people don't want to shock the door anymore, but shocking basically means you take your adze and you hit the top of the door, the middle of the door, and the bottom, and you're searching for locks or anything that's giving you a little more trouble. You'll feel flex where there isn't any locks. It'll be a little stronger. Sometimes it can cause damage to those locks and get you started, and can help create that gap that you need to get your tool in. You can see in this picture, this guy is creating his gap with his foot, so he's just pushing in on the door and grabbing that capture with his wedge there. You want to gap the door, you want to get that tool in and set the tool, whether that's with a striking tool, a second person, and once that tool is set, then you can force the door. Don't ignore the obvious, so I would say, in theory, we want to force the door in firefighting so that we can control the door. If we decide that that's not going to be the door we use, we can close it off and we can control that flow path. However, if it's taking too long, we have things to do. We have a fire to put out. We have a possible rescue to make. We can't be messing around with the door. The door is more of a sideshow. It's in our way. We can't use all of our energy on it. So if there are windows right next to it, like this case, don't be afraid, if you're having trouble with the door, to just take out one of these small windows, unlock the door, and then go from there. When you're using the Halligan with two people, you're going to want to be in a cross iron stance. So you can see here the Halligan and the axe make a T shape, and that is to protect the other person. So if I miss high here, I'm not going to strike him, and if I miss low, I'm just going to miss everything. If I were standing up, swinging the axe like a baseball bat, and I miss, there's a high potential for me to hit him in the elbow. So if you're using two people, especially if you're stressed, can't get the door, start swinging a baseball bat, there's a high chance that you're going to miss. And there's plenty of videos out there that show it, where someone strikes someone else in the arm or the elbow. So two-person, get down on a knee, and you're going to strike like this. The different commands when we have two people are ready, so both of us acknowledging that we're ready to get to work. Hit. The person that's holding the Halligan is the one calling the shots. His job is to watch the Halligan and steer it, not to watch me hit. And my job is to just hit, and that's it. Once the tool is set where we want it to be, and we will talk about that in a minute, then you can say drive. And drive just means continuous hits without any stopping. You don't have to say hit, hit, hit anymore. You say drive, and I'm just going to hit until you say stop. Stop is universal. Every language, everyone basically knows stop. And if you say that, both of you stop what you're doing. Wedge is when you want to hold your capture, whether with an axe or a metal wedge, wooden wedge, whatever you have, and that's going to hold the door in place and hold that capture for you. So again, the first move I always use is the gap down. If there is not enough of a jam to grab onto, or sometimes when you gap down it might break the jam if it's a wooden jam, then you can go into a baseball swing or you can go into the fork method. So just keep that in mind, and I'll bring that up again as we go. So again, he gaps down. The next move he could do, first of all, you would want to call for a wedge right now, throw an axe in the door like this to hold your capture so the door will not want to shut. Real doors, wooden doors, especially when the deadbolt is still holding on, is going to want to close. The next move is called the second move or the finishing move. That's when you put the Halligan up on top like this, and then you would just pry down. This move is a 5-to-1, so you're going to get that extra length from the adze versus the gap down, but you're not going to get the mechanical advantage of it. So if it's a really strong door, you might not get the force with this move. If you don't, you can switch over to the forks. When you switch to the forks, you're going to need someone to strike. You can practice striking on your own, but it's a lot easier if you have someone to strike. So get in that crouch position and call for your hits. So you'd say hit, hit, hit. And when the crotch of the tool aligns with the door jamb, that's when you stop. That's when you have the best fulcrum. That's when you're getting that 12.5-to-1 advantage. And when you get that, you go to the door, and that should hopefully force it. If not, you will switch over to your adze length again, and the door should be heavily damaged at this point and able to be forced. This is an example that I talked about earlier, the adze to pick triangle. You can see there's enough space for both the pick and the adze to get inside of that door jamb, and you just pull the tool towards you, and that will give you a 6-to-1 advantage instead of a 5-to-1. The reason that this whole mechanical advantage and spread thing is so important is because in training and in real life, you will see very often that when someone's having a hard time and they're not strong enough to get the door, they'll switch to a move that has less mechanical advantage, which when you really understand and know the tool, when you're having a hard time, you'll know when it's appropriate to go up or down with your advantage. Steering the tool is super important. So here you can see me holding the Halligan. Somebody is about to strike, and every time they hit, I'm going to pull that tool back 1/8 of an inch, and that's to get it around the door frame. So if we just go straight into that door jamb, especially on a wooden door, it's going to cause a ton of damage and make us have to go further away from the lock or the doorknob. You want to be within 6 inches of that lock or doorknob, so the more damage that we cause and the further we get away from it, the harder it's going to be to force. So you'll see here, I'm going to call for my hits. Every hit I'm pulling back 1/8 of an inch, steering it around. Once I clear that jam, I call for a drive. Then go to the door with the tool for the force. Same thing with this one, the tool's just turned the other way. Once the tool is set, it's up to the forks and the crotch, and you go to the door. I'm going to gap up for good mechanical advantage and finish with the adze to pick triangle. So a question you get a lot is bevel to the jamb or bevel to the door. Some people call bevel to the jamb cheating, but it looks easier if you have a nice curved set of forks. It will get around the jamb a little bit easier. The problem is when you go to force the door, this adze length is going to be in your way, so you're not going to get that full 2 inches of spread that you want. It's fine if that happens to you. All you do is call for a wedge the door, flip the tool around, and then you can finish it off this way. So if you can, bevel to the door is better because you don't have that adze length like you have over here on bevel to the jamb. Bevel to the door, when you go to the door, you get that full 2 inches of spread. So this is an example of an inward swinging door, single person. If you're by yourself in the fire service, you can end up alone very often. You're on a 3-man engine crew, whatever, your officer's doing a 360, and you got to force the door by yourself. So the first thing I would do is either throw a metal wedge or a metal axe into the crack of the door and give it a few hits. You can see here it's pretty tight. When I give it a couple of hits, it creates a gap there for my adze. Once I can get my adze into the door, I'm going to gap down. To remember this, you always go opposite the pick. Obviously, if I tried to gap up here, then the pick would be in the way. So we're going to gap down. When we gap down, it's really important that you go the full spread with that adze all the way down. You gap all the way down until the tool is flush with the door. A lot of people will stop halfway, so then they're only getting about an inch of spread. You want to get that full 2 inches because the 2 inches gives you the best mechanical advantage and damage to the door. Once you have this, you stick the axe in the door. You can take the Halligan out now, and you can use it as a striking tool. So the axe is holding that capture. I pull out my Halligan. I give this a bunch of hits. It creates a nice big gap in the door for my tool, and I can stick my adze in now. And you can either finish it off, with the adze length if you're strong enough, or if the door is damaged enough. And if not, you can gap down again. So before we gap down with this jam, now we're on the other side of the jam, and you could gap down again. If for some reason you have to keep gapping down, you just have to close up that hole. You use an axe or a wedge to close that hole within that 2 inches again, and you can keep gapping down. Most likely, though, you'll cause enough damage to the door where you can switch to the other moves that are 5 to 1, just putting that adze in and pulling the tool towards you, or using the forks. This is an outward swinging single person. Again, the technique is the same. I stick my axe in the door. Metal wedges are really key on commercial doors because they can be really tight, and the metal wedge is a lot thinner than the axe. So if you can, the axe is nice because it stays standing up and doesn't fall out as easily as a wedge. But I put my axe in, give it a few hits. That creates a nice gap for me now. Now I can get my adze in there. You want that adze to grab the back side of this door if you can. If you don't, especially on a metal door, and you pull too early, the tool will slide out on you. Luckily, you'll have your axe there holding your capture. If you don't, and you pull that tool out, now you have to start all the way over from the beginning. So once you pull on this tool, you pull the Halligan towards you. That should finish it off. If it doesn't, you just add muscle if you have another person, or you could add length, such as another Halligan. If you bite both of the fork ends together, the longer the tool, the more advantage that you create. So it'd be more like a 12 to 1 advantage if you made it longer. And then if you're just a little bit off, you can do the adze to pick triangle move again, sticking those in, giving you that 6 to 1 advantage. Crushing the door. Here's a video of these guys crushing this door on metal doors, especially on commercial buildings. There's not a ton of space. You probably will need someone to hit you in, and then you're going to crush that door. Our practice doors are steel. They don't crush. They just move the whole door. In real life, that metal is probably going to crush, so here's an example of what happens. So he's striking that tool to get it set, and then he's going to go up and down like a can opener method with the front side of the door. The whole object is to get to that second sheet of metal on the back side. That would be the interior side of the door. After you have enough space, you're going to have someone strike your adze now. And when you do that, it will dent the back side of the door. Right now, he just did it twice. It gives him enough space to get his adze in the other side of the door now. And he's going to do the same method by gapping up and down, creating enough space to set that adze on the back side of the door, and then pull towards him with that 5 to 1 method. I talked about the baseball swing a little bit already. This would be, like I said, residential. You walk up, you go to gap down. There's not enough of a jam for the tool to bite. Or when you gap down, the wooden piece breaks off. Now you do the baseball swing method. Right into the jam. You can pry down or pull that tool towards your hips. Screen doors are an absolute nuisance to us in the fire service. If you're someone that's just standing around, watching someone struggle with forcing the door or advancing a hose line, if there was a hose line coming from around the corner here, this door would be an issue, especially if it closes on it. So just grab a Halligan and get it out of the way. And now it is not a factor. The K-tool is a really great tool to carry on your rigs. It's called the K-tool because it is shaped like the letter K. There is a right way to put it on, and you want your angled part of the K going away from your door jamb. If it was a really tight space, when you drive this tool down, it kind of wants to go towards that angle part of the K. I haven't really had it become a problem for me, but just keep that in mind. I have all of our K tools labeled with jam and an arrow pointing with the correct direction, so you don't have to think about it on calls. But you're going to grab onto the lock on the outside of the door. This would most likely be a double commercial door or even a single, that the mortise lock or cylinder sticks out on the outside of the door. You're going to stick your K-tool on it, and then your pry tool, which is going to be a Halligan in this case, you stick right through it, and then you're going to pry up, which will rip out the cylinder. Sometimes it falls on the ground, sometimes the tool catches it, but you're going to look at the cylinder now, and it's either going to be a cam, which is shaped sort of like a head or a skull, or a stem lock. So the reason this is important is because the other tool that comes with your K-tool is called a key tool. And so if it's a stem lock, then you use the flat side to unlock the door, and if it is a cam, then you use the curved end. So if you look at this curved end, we'll go back for a second, it's exactly the same shape as the cam, and so when you stick it into the locking mechanism to unlock the door, it will fit perfectly in that place. So this is the cylinder clock, we call it. Once you get the cylinder off, you're going to stick your tool right into the 7 or the 5 o'clock position, depending on which way the door swings. You can try both, and whichever way it goes and whichever way it moves, that will unlock that deadbolt. So look at 5 and look at 7, and then move that spring lock over. So the way that these doors are installed, it's called the mortise lock. This part goes right into the door, and then they put the cylinder in. It screws in. You can see right there, it looks just like a screw. Once it's screwed into the correct position, there's something called a set pin, and this set pin is screwed in, so people cannot just walk up and unscrew the cylinder. However, if you carry a pair of vice grips or channel locks, it's pretty easy to shear this pin right here. I'll show you that right now. So you're just going to go in one solid motion, up or down, and then it's going to shear that pin. Once the pin is sheared, you can unscrew it just like a regular screw, and you will use that 5 to 7 or 7 to 5 clock method to unlock the door. You don't have a K-tool, you don't have a Rex tool, and you don't have a tool to pull the cylinder, you could use a screwdriver. So you stick the screwdriver in, you can tap it in with a hammer. I haven't had to use vice grips because if you have a really beefy screwdriver, you can just turn it to the left. They show here someone using vice grips also, and then it will just unscrew that lock. This can be really beneficial in commercial buildings, and now you get to see the key tool in action, that 7 to 5 o'clock method there for you. Here's a custom tool that I carry in my pocket. So it's basically like a K-tool because I can grab onto that cylinder with this piece, and then depending if it's a stem lock, I can use this end of the tool, or if it's a cam, then this is a bent end for me to stick it into that 7 o'clock or the 5 o'clock position. The metal wedge, super important to carry. I carry it on the left side of my helmet because most likely the Halligan's going to be in my right hand. Say I'm gapping down and I want to hold capture, I can hold my tool in place, reach up with my left hand, and then stick that wedge in to hold my capture. It just creates enough space in the door for me to create a gap, get the tool in, and force a locked door very easily, and I didn't even break the lock. These are some, medium entry methods like we talked about, so we're causing some damage, but we're not breaking the entire door and door frame. That could cost, upwards of $1,000 or more. So we're going to attack these doorknobs instead. This method is very successful. These types of doorknobs are out there by the thousand. They're in, a lot of apartment buildings around town and different places that we go. So you just take a screwdriver and you bang it in, or some sort of prying tool, and you pry this bezel right out of the door. Once it's out, you either grab this piece right here with needle nose pliers, or there's usually a flat end right here that you can just use that same screwdriver to turn to the left, and then that will unlock the door. Super efficient way to get through these doorknobs if you cannot get through it with using a passive method. This deadbolt method, you take an axe or a strong hammer, give it a couple taps. It's going to expose the inside of that locking mechanism. And then you just take a pick, a traveler's hook we call them, stick it in, and you grab the top of the lock, and that unlocks the deadbolt. It's a simple way to get in. The really cool part is if you get in, do what you have to do, and get out, you can relock the door, hit that back into place, and then it still needs to get replaced by them, but at least for the night their house is still secured. Sometimes these locks, though, have a shield that fight you from using a pick on the very top here. So you tap this down, you'd see the shield. That method isn't going to work. You're going to have to actually pry the entire deadbolt off. Sometimes, even using a Rex tool, it can be hard to break those bolts. I carry a mini pair of bolt cutters, and that cuts through those bolts very easily. So once you get it off, you can look at the lock. It was a stem lock, so I know I'm going to use the flat side of my key tool and just unlock the deadbolt. Something really important to keep in mind is that the whole purpose of using the medium method is to cause less damage. I carry this metal electrical plate in my bag, just a quick piece of duct tape, puts it in place so that when you go to force this doorknob off, that it doesn't cause damage to the door. You can see all this damage we cause here. If they have to still replace their door, it really defeats the purpose of this method. So keep that in mind. This guy here will show you. He's using something called the Rex tool. Really great tool for ripping off doorknobs and deadbolts. And with one quick motion, he has that doorknob off. There's usually a piece of plastic on it. He's about to pull it off. When you pull that piece of plastic off, you can just unlock the door by hand. Drilling through is another great method. It works really good on quick set. On the Slage, it's a little harder sometimes to figure out where the bolt is, but you can see I missed here a couple times. Even if you miss, though, then you can see where the bolt actually is, and you drill the bolt out, and what actually happens is the drill bit pushes the screws out on the other side, and then you can just unlock the door from the outside with a screwdriver or key tool. Padlocks, super important to be able to get through padlocks with hand tools. Hand tools never die, they never run out of fuel, and usually when you're in the middle of a building like this one, nobody's carrying a saw with them. So if you ever have to get through one, it's really important to know how to get through them. Cheaper locks break really easily. If they're on a chain twisted up like this, that takes out the slack so the lock isn't moving around as much. And you'll see here, with one quick hit, he'll bust right through that shackle, and he's through that chain. I ask, usually a newer firefighter in the room how they would get through this, and it's even happened to more senior firefighters where we've got up to a call and a padlock really can throw us off. So usually when I ask how people would get through this, they say they would bolt cut through it, cut with a saw, whatever. You can see here how easy it would be just to pry this right off with a Halligan. Anytime I see a hasp that is screwed into wood, that excites me because I know that Halligan will pry that off with no problem. Usually these hasps come with screws that are very short and easy to pull off. This really nice commercial master lock is great, but it's not going to do a whole lot of good on a hasp that just has the screws that came with it. It can be pried off very easily. The puck lock seems like a newer thing that people are using. It could really throw us off. when we pull up on scene. I've seen them on houses, storage containers, U-Haul trucks. People are paying extra money for these because you cannot attack the bolt with a set of bolt cutters. It protects that bolt with that puck shape. The bolt actually runs right through the center of the lock. And so the big thing to take home with these is we're going to have to cut them with a K12 saw, but we need to know where the keyhole is. So wherever the keyhole is, draw a straight line across the lock, and where we're going to cut is going to be right here through the bolt. If you happen to cut it in the wrong place, parallel for instance, then it would be no good. It would still be locked once you get through, this heavy metal. It takes a couple of minutes usually, 1, 2, 3 minutes to get through it. So if you don't know what you're doing and you don't cut through the right spot, now we're talking 5, maybe 6 minutes getting through this lock when we're trying to get through a door. So understand how it works. The bolt goes through the middle. This one, right where the master sign is, but some of them don't have any label on them. And then we just want to cut a T shape through it. And then when you cut all the way through it, it's just going to drop out and the door is going to open. Getting into some of the passive entry stuff, this is where you want to be, thinking a little bit outside of the box. We have a little bit extra time to think before we act, so throwing a ladder to the second floor is always a good option. People don't lock their second floor windows a lot because they feel that safety factor where people can't reach them. An AC unit like this photo, people don't usually have any security methods attached to their air conditioner, so getting through those is pretty easy. You just have to be careful when you open that window that the AC isn't going to fall out on somebody, and that if you're going through the window and pushing that AC back inside, that you're not dropping it on somebody that might be on the floor. And then my favorite is the garage door. If you go to a call and there's a car in the driveway, oftentimes if it has a garage, there will be a garage door button right on their visor. Open that door, hit the garage door button, and then you're at least into the garage. And most people don't lock that door, that entry door into their house. Through the gate method, this is a really slick method where you throw a ladder under the gate. It sets off a sensor, and then the gate opens. You can see how if we pulled up to this call, how it would be very stressful, how we're going to get through this gate. Do we have to cut it? How is it locked, secured? If you keep this method in mind, you can always try throwing a ladder under it, and you can see here how nicely that opened up for us if there was some sort of car fire back there or we need to get to the rear of a building. It's called the firefighter swipe tool. It's a great tool. It is the most common tool that I use for passive entry. All you're going to do is start at the top of the door, and you're going to slide it down. Once you slide it down past the deadbolt, then you know you're good. If it's deadbolted, obviously you're not going to be able to do it. And then you're going to get up to the doorknob area. You're going to pull that doorknob in, and then you're going to push down with that tool. Something worth mentioning here, and I'm going to show an example of it coming up. There's something called a dead pin on your doorknob, and that's to prevent people from picking your doorknob with a piece of plastic. Basically, when the door closes, that pin gets compressed and doesn't allow you to pick it anymore. The way to get around it is to pull that doorknob as hard as you can towards you, and then that mechanism will fall into the hole, and it will no longer be compressed, and you'll be able to bypass it with the tool. And I will show you a video of that coming up. This is the fire pick. This door is not installed correctly, so that dead pin did not stop it. Stuck the tool right in and opened it. That's called the fire pick. Another great tool for commercial or outward swinging doors, and most of them are installed incorrectly, so very easy to get through. The J tool. This tool, you can stick through the crack of double doors like this. There's a swivel on the bottom that allows you to spin the tip of it at places like Shaw's, Stop and Shop, Met's grocery store, any places like that that have that space in the door. You can see them stick the tool through and spin the bottom of it and unlock the door from the outside of the building. So commercial doors also have that dead pin. I'll show you in a second. So it was compressed and engaged. The way to get around that on an outward swinging door is to use a flat bar. So he sticks the flat bar in, he pries the door apart from the jamb, and that is going to make that dead pin no longer be compressed, and then he's able to pick it with the fire pick or this tool that he has. So he spreads the door, sticks the tool in, and he can unlock it. You'll see the video on the left. When I push down on that, you cannot pick it. You need to spread that door apart. And here's the residential one that I said I would show you. Right here is the dead pin. When it's compressed when you close your door, you cannot pick this. The way to get around it is to pull on the door very hard. Both of these fall into the hole, and then this is no longer compressed, and you'll be able to use that firefighter swipe tool. So you can pick it now. When you compress it, nope, not happening. This is called the zip tie method. So you get through the doorknob, but then you figure out that it has this privacy lock. Put a zip tie around it, and then you push the zip tie through from the outside. Chain lock, you're going to take a carabiner. Same thing, you get through the doorknob. You're going to put the carabiner on the chain. Put that piece of webbing up to the corner of the door. Pull it off. Obviously, this is a non-emergent situation, so we can take our time. In real life, you can rip those chains off very easily if there's a fire or something more important. Bump keys. This is a newer technique, but I've actually found it's not that hard to learn, pick up, and teach. It takes a little bit of practice, but basically you buy a set of keys. They're the 10 most common keys that people have for their houses: Quickset, Slage, master key for padlocks. And basically you put a rubber ring around it and you start hitting it with a hammer. And when you do that, all of the pins inside the lock bounce around, and if they happen to align with a little bit of tension on that key, the deadbolt will unlock. And I've found this to be pretty successful on a few different calls. And here's an example. So 5, 6, 7 hits, and then I'm through a deadbolt. The DDT tool, it's like a little hook, double doors. This is a school. You spread the doors enough apart, or you just shove that tool right through, and then you can grab the panic bar on the other side. Very, very successful tool. This is called the panic bar tool. You can buy it. It fits in your pocket, in your pants if you want to carry it, and it makes getting through gates and other doors like the last one very easy. So stick it right through the door, marinas, places like that, and then you're through. This other double set of doors fits right in there. Grab the panic bar on the other side. This next tool is called the under the door tool, and basically you slide it under the door and then you grab the doorknob from the inside. On the inside of a locked door, there is a mechanism that allows you to open that door without unlocking the door for an emergency case. So in a lot of these, big locked up secured buildings, inside the buildings, the offices, they have to have a big crack under the door for ventilation or whatever, I assume. So there's always that space, and usually they have to have, that doorknob on the inside be non-locking. So you'll see here, sticks the tool under the door, and then you can unlock the door from the outside by grabbing into that doorknob. That same tool used here is on a motion detector. So if you ever think about when you go to the doctor's office, a hospital, whatever, you walk through those automatic doors. Once you get close enough, the grocery store, whatever, when it sees motion, the door opens. We take that under the door tool, stick it through the crack, wave it around. sets off the motion, and then we unlock this door. Get out in your neighborhoods. These are, local places. The one on the left is Duke's Country Store. So the back door has this drop bar, which usually there's bolts in them, so you can tell from the outside. In this case, you wouldn't even know there's a drop bar there. You would just go to force that door and have a really hard time with it. So get out into your neighborhood, see these types of doors. Now I know if I ever go there, I'm just not going to go to that door. I'm going to go to the front door. But if I have to, then I also know that there's a drop bar and that it's going to take, a significant amount of effort. This store right here is Louis Pizza in Plastow. It's pretty secure, so they got a lock up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe even that's 1, 2, 5. So if you just went to force this door right here, you're probably going to end up running into some trouble with some of these other locks. So, and then this one you can see, this is a hotel, and they're locking the door from the top, and there was also one on the bottom. So be prepared to force the door in other areas other than where the doorknob and the deadbolt is. Be prepared to fail. This is a call that I did about 6 months ago or so, maybe longer, where it's an interior door. We're in a smoke condition. We just put the fire basically out. I was trying to get through a door that separated two buildings into another building, and I was still on air, still smoke condition, and I ran into some trouble. So I started this presentation out with talking about a time that I had trouble, and I'm going to end it with one too, because even after all of this time, I still ended up having trouble with the door again. I did get through it. Probably took me about 1 to 1.5 minutes, but definitely longer than I wanted. A bunch of my guys that I work with are standing back, giving me a hard time. Mr. Door Guy over here, but I've been humbled by a door before. I'll probably be humbled by a door again, and I think everybody will in their career. So the point is to work through that. When people are giving you a hard time in the background, when you got to get through it, people are waiting, people want to get to work. You just have to focus on what you're doing, remember your basic skills, and get through it. I took these pictures so I could figure out, what went wrong and where I was having trouble. And when I break it down, some of the things that I'll take away from this call: number one, the car where it was parked was in the way of me using the gap down method. So again, I need to switch to another method. And I never have really practiced for something being in the doorway like that. So that's, problem one. Problem two, I was standing on top of this cart right here that had wheels on it. I didn't really know what I was standing on, and I wish I paid better attention to the fact that the thing was moving around while I'm trying to work. So, take a deep breath, figure out what we have. Notice this cart here, you can see the wheels right there, and get it the hell out of the way so that I can work. Another thing is there's a bunch of boards or whatever these are in the doorway, and you can still see them there even after I force the door. So moving those boards out of the way, moving that cart out of the way, and then having more than one method again to get through the door and overcoming a potential failure. And find real door opportunities. So this was a door that I found on the side of the road a couple days before my training. All I did is throw a couple 2x4s around the door. I put a brace on the top, and I ended up putting one on the bottom too. And then it's just standing up with a couple of pallets. It stood up really well. On the back side, I put a bunch of door hinges so I could screw them in, and we could get more than one force out of it. We probably got about 3 or 4 forces before the door needed to get a little bit more work done to it to get more forces in. So use real doors. There's nothing like a real door that's going to give you that experience. The blue door, other training doors are really great, and that's how you learn, the mechanical advantages and, step A, step B, C, D, all the way up to F it. But there's nothing that beats real doors and getting out there. So whether you can get buildings that they're tearing down, or when you find an entire door that's still intact on the side of the road, grab it, put the prop together, and then get some real forces in with the guys, because that's the only way that you can see how real doors act. And that's it. These are some of my references. There's a lot more. But, none of this stuff is, information that I came up with on my own. It all came from other people, that books and videos that I watched and read. So I give all the credit to all of these people that help make me better, and in turn, hopefully, will help make some other people better as well. If anyone wants to reach me, you can email me at tpoussard18@gmail.com. It's TPOUSSARD18 at gmail.com. And thanks for listening.